Sundays with Sanju.
What's going on, y'all? It's Bullisary, and welcome back to another video. Damn right, the NBA playoffs are upon us, and I honestly can't believe we've gotten to this point. When the league was suspended in late March, I honestly had no clue the league would reopen and run so smoothly in this Orlando bubble. And it's just credit to the commissioner, Adam Silver, and the organization itself, the NBA, on running so smoothly compared to other leagues like baseball and football. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference playoffs, round one, and try to predict the winners and losers of this year's playoffs. Disclaimer, I think it would be important to mention that this year's playoffs is probably going to be the most weirdest in league history. The higher seeds, unlike in previous years, do not have the advantage of home court and fans, so there's a lot of upset potential in this year's playoffs. However, I think specifically for the Eastern Conference, for round one, it's very unlikely this is going to play a role, and you'll see as I go on with the video. Anyway, without further ado, let's start. The league best Milwaukee Bucks face the 8th-seeded Orlando Magic in the first round, and it honestly should be a sweep. I'm just wondering whether Coach Bud may play Giannis only until the first half, because that's exactly what he did to the Detroit Pistons. And though the Orlando Magic are probably more competent than last year's Pistons, with stars like Gordon and Vucevic and complementary role players like Augustin, Fournier, and Terrence Ross, they're nothing compared to the Bucks' level at the peak, and I just hope they rest Giannis enough for the second round. Moving on to the 2-7 matchup, which include the Toronto Raptors, defending champions I might add. I know you forgot they won the chip last year, don't underestimate them, and the overachieving Brooklyn Nets. Now obviously the Toronto Raptors are going to win this series, they're just too much of a juggernaut. They're the second best defensive team in the league according to defensive rating, hold opponents to the lowest three-point percentage in the league at 34%, and hold opponents in the paint to the lowest field goal percentage as well at 43%. So they're obviously a defensive juggernaut, and with the Brooklyn Nets being undermanned, not having Kyrie Irving, not having Kevin Durant, not having Spencer Dinwiddie, and DeAndre Jordan, if you think that's a contribution, yeah, I know. They're just not that great. However, after seeing what they've done in the bubble and that amazing thriller against Portland, I'm having respect for them so much that I'm probably going to up the series into a 5-game series. Just because I think Caris LeVert can probably take them out for one game. Caris LeVert is quietly averaging 26th in the bubble and has been that guy for this team, and has honestly kind of given them this swagger, this confidence, this bravado that this team lacked after their main guy, Kyrie, went out with an injury. And with overachieving guys like Joe Harris, Jared Allen, Timothy Cabral, and Tyler Johnson, I think the Nets can sneak one past the Raptors and make this a somewhat competent series compared to the last one I talk about. Honestly, it's weird. There's a lot of parallels between the Brooklyn Nets of this year and the Clippers of last year. Overachieving team that didn't expect to get this far, but are clearly missing superstar pieces. In this case, obviously being Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So, in short, Raptors in 5, but honestly, this might bite me in the ass, and the Raptors might just be too good. Could be a sweep, but I'm going to say 5-game series because Caris LeVert is that bad man. Boston-Philly is probably going to be the most watched series in the Eastern Conference so far, and I can completely understand why. Two storied franchises going head-to-head. Both these teams have had run-ins in the past, specifically 2 years ago when the Celtics disposed of the Sixers in 5 games. And what's ironic about that is that I think history is going to repeat itself, and the Celtics are again going to dispose of the Sixers in 5 games. And I don't think my statement would change even if Simmons was on the court. Unfortunately, we can't see that because Simmons has been diagnosed with a knee injury and has left the bubble. But my point is, I think this is just mainly because the Sixers have had a disappointing season this year. Offensively, they've been inept at times, and they just haven't figured out how Simmons, Embiid, and Horford can stay on the court on the same time. Defensively, they've just been a flat-out disappointment, and even though having talent on that end with an interior presence in Embiid and Horford and perimeter guys like Matisse Thybulle and Ben Simmons, they just haven't been the best team on that end and have been ranked more middle of the pack, which is a flat out disturbing revelation. Overall, man, I understand the Sixers do have the matchup with the Celtics in terms that Embiid can absolutely dominate the Celtics fives in Enes Kanter and Daniel Theis, but I think we're cutting Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Gordon Hayward, and Marcus Smart a little short here. They're an offensive, talented bunch, and I just don't think they have answers for these guys. In the same way, they don't have an answer for Embiid on the Celtics end. But I just think the Sixers have found ways to be disappointing this season. I just don't think they can flip a switch like that when the playoffs have started. They had a disappointing bubble. They let TJ Warren drop 50 on them, right? And they've just kind of been going down ever since. Overall, to cut it short, I think the Celtics are going to win the series in 5. Who knows? It may be more competitive than I'm letting on. I've just been disappointed in the Sixers. I just don't think they can show one thing and show a completely different thing. I hope I'm proven wrong because I always want to see Embiid be that second best player in the East like I know he could be. But, you know, with him being injured already with his rolled ankle and having issues with his fingers/thumb, I think the Sixers are just going downhill and going to have a very interesting offseason after I predict, of course, they're going to be vanquished in the first round. Man, Miami, Indiana, we've seen this movie a few times, 2013, 2014. The result is probably going to be the same. Miami is probably the most underrated team in the bubble, currently in the playoffs. And this goes for both conferences. With scorers like Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, the list goes on and on. They're the best three-point shooting team in the NBA. And with an elite shooter like Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero in the perimeter, this team can go very far in the playoffs. Now, I understand Jimmy Butler-led teams certainly have a cap, as shown in previous years, and usually they fizzle out by the second round, but I think Miami is different. Jimmy has never had a talented team like Miami this year, and they're honestly amazing on both ends of the court. And they're probably going to win the series in 5 most likely. And though Miami is a great team like I mentioned before, and if you want to hear more about them, check out the video in the card right now as I explain why they're so underrated. But this win has more to do with how banged up the Pacers are. Their main all-star for this year, Domantas Sabonis, was out with a foot injury and didn't even enter the bubble when these seeding games began. TJ Warren, an early candidate for the bubble MVP, has been plagued with the same foot injury Sabonis is handling, and that may impact his play in the playoffs. Moreover, Oladipo isn't that same guy he was back in 2018, and in some possessions, man, Miles Turner looks lost. And though Nate McMillan has coached a great group of guys that have overachieved and honestly has done this for a couple of years, I just think there's a huge talent disparity between these two teams, and Miami can capitalize off that. Well, damn, we did it. We have just predicted the round 1 series in the Eastern Conference. And if my predictions are spot on, this is basically what your second round is going to look like. The Milwaukee Bucks will face the Miami Heat, and the Boston Celtics will face the Toronto Raptors. And I, for one, really want these series. They're both really fun, very competitive, and has storylines that can intrigue the best of NBA fans. Overall, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I don't think that many upsets are going to happen in the Eastern Conference, and round 1 has shown that. Hopefully, these turn out to be correct, because then my ego will get a huge boost. But regardless, this was a fun exercise. Comment down below, guys, what you think about these series and whether my analysis of these teams are correct or not. I know these were very vague descriptions of them, and I didn't really go into them like I probably should. But usually, at the end of the day, a playoff series is dictated whether you have the best player or not. And that's kind of where most of my predictions went, if you look back into it. Anyways, guys, the Western Conference version of this video will be coming out the day after this one, so stay tuned for that. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell and like the video. It truly helps a lot. Anyway, it's going to be it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and remember to peace out.
Timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.